Hello, everyone. I'm a little early. I'll just wait a little while for people to show up. This is Unstuck and Unstoppable from Inner Power Training. I can't wait to share some information with you. This is a free 8-week program. I'll start in a few minutes. It's not quite 6 o'clock yet. It's 6 o'clock Eastern time is when we scheduled this for. So I'll be doing it every Wednesday for the next 8 weeks. Okay, I'm going to get started. We are live on YouTube. And today, this is Unstuck and Unstoppable, the beginning of an 8-week series based on this book, The Secrets of Manifesting, A Practical Guide, which came out a few months ago. Less than a year. And the companion book, which I might be covering in the next 8 weeks after that, is called The Secrets of Manifesting Mastery. And in this book, we have a 30-day journal that you can use, because when you write down your goals, you get better results. So I want to talk to you first. I'm going to give you an overview of what we're covering in these 8 weeks. I have been a metaphysical teacher, a metaphysical junkie for many, many years. And I started teaching officially in 2004 when I became a Silva Ultramind trainer, working with the Silva family. And Alex Silva, the nephew of Jose Silva, was my mentor. And I traveled all over the country teaching seminars from the West Coast to the East Coast and everything in between. And it was a blast. I trained over 3,000 people in that program, the Silva Ultramind, teaching people how to get down to that alpha level of consciousness so that you can shift your vibration, your frequency down to the alpha level. You know, it's all about the frequency now. People are starting to realize we are vibrational beings. So I want to give you some background on how I got to that place. I was born way back in 1946, and I was always curious, very curious about everything. Always wanted to know what we're doing here, what the human thing is all about. It always seemed very curious to me that we make the decisions we make. And, you know, I was always questioning, why do we do that? Why? Well, then in 1966, I had this mind-bending experience when I was sitting on the coast of Massachusetts, looking out toward the island of Martha's Vineyard. All of a sudden, 3 UFOs flew in from that area. And I was sitting right there in a car, right on the edge of the ocean, got out of the car, and these 3 saucers with domes on top hovered over my head. Well, you can reflect on things after time passes and you hear other stories. I'm convinced that something happened to me that night because it gave me an open mind. And I have always been very easily accepting of paranormal stories and things that we can do, like manifesting, healing ourselves, remote viewing, being telepathic. All of these topics have absolutely fascinated me, and I've dug into them and proven to myself that they're all possible. Everything is possible. Well, right after I saw the 3 UFOs, I got highly, highly motivated to join the airlines. I was 18 when I saw the UFOs, or 19, and I started applying. And it was funny because I didn't get accepted to the first one I applied to, which was Trans World Airways, TWA. They rejected me after 3 interviews, but that turned out to be a good thing. I got hired by Eastern and United, and I took United Airlines and accepted my job there as a stewardess back in the 60s. And I moved to Chicago where I had training. As soon as I got out of training, I moved into a building in Chicago with a lot of other stewardesses. We called it a stew zoo back then. And I met a man who taught me the art of creative visualization. He just very simply explained to me, this is what you do. You just write down on an index card what you want in the present tense, put it by your bed. As you're falling asleep at night, feel like you've already gotten it. And when you wake up in the morning, do the same thing. And it worked so beautifully for me. I've been on the path ever since. Now, the reason I wrote my books that came out recently, there's another book that came out 10 years ago called The Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant. But I wanted to write these short books, really nailing down how you can use your creative imagination and your abilities to manifest and heal yourself and be happy and get rid of anxiety. Because when I learned this simple technique, which worked so well, I was blown away that it wasn't mainstream. I was never told when I went to church. I went to a congregational church when I was young, right through my teen years. They never really talked specifically about how Jesus did the things he did. We talked around it. We talked about his stories, but we never really dug in and figured out in that church how it worked. And I never heard about it in college. I mean, we take philosophy and study Plato and Socrates and, different philosophers, but to really know, to learn and know that you have the power within you to use your imagination with intention, that's the key. You have to understand, if you don't have intention, it doesn't work. If it's just wishy-washy, you're just always living by default. Meaning, we're all programmed as young children because of our environment, our families, our societies, our countries that we grow up in. We get a programming because that's how we function in the 3-dimensional world. And whatever your belief system is, you will default back to that when you're experiencing things because that's your comfort zone. It keeps you safe. But if you have an experience like I did with these 3 UFOs, you start to think outside the box because there was nothing in the news about where these were coming from. Nobody could explain it. I called an Air Force base on Cape Cod that night. My friend did, called Otis Air Force Base to see if they knew anything. And they said, no, but we know other people had the same sighting that you did, but there were no helicopters or anything around. So I got highly, highly motivated to join the airline so I could interview pilots. I really thought I could find out from, people that flew all the time where they were coming from. The other option would have been maybe the military, but that didn't suit me back in the 60s. So in 1967, I did join the airlines and I started interviewing pilots and found out they weren't supposed to talk about it. we did talk about things that we saw, and people were seeing a lot of things in the 60s. There were, sometimes they'd call it swamp gas, or, make up different excuses for what people were seeing because they didn't really want to talk about it directly, which I just found so much more intriguing, even more so, because I love a good mystery. And so I just kept digging and digging and digging to find out what I could about UFOs. And there are an awful lot of sightings, and I think there's more and more people coming forward that have been contacted. And I've had some very mystical experiences in my life. I'll talk about those maybe in some of the other videos that I do. But I want to share with you some of the other reasons that I'm teaching this Unstuck and Unstoppable. We are living in the time of the Great Awakening. No doubt about it. This is a transitional period. Many of the mystics and people that were tuned in have always known this. Jose Silva, the man I told you I taught his programs, he started teaching in the 60s, something called Silva Mind Control, and then it began to be called Silva Ultramind, which is what I was teaching. And he was a visionary, and he could see that we were entering into the next phase of human evolution. This is the phase where we activate our supernatural powers, which are really natural. And when you understand that you are really, yes, a spiritual being who happens to be moving around in the three-dimensional world in your physical body, but it's not the real you. The real you is not your body, and it's not your human mind. It's your soul, your higher consciousness, your eternal self, whatever you want to call it. And once you meet that and have an experience of remembering yourself and becoming enlightened, you're a different person than you were when you were just stuck in your three-dimensional world with your mortal mind, your human mind, and you didn't understand that there is so much more to you. And that's why I am teaching what I teach with these teachings that I wrote about in my book. I touch on it too in my other book, The Secrets of a Metaphysical Flight Attendant, because there are so many synchronicities that happen to all of us, but you need to be able to identify them and see them for what they are, because they're pointing you in the right direction. Let me give you another example. I flew for United for 35 years, which was a wonderful career. I had a blast. I flew from 1967 until 2002. 1 year after 9/11, I was based in Boston during that terrible incident that happened. And I flew one more year, and I had 35 years. So it was time for me to retire, which I did. I went to a party in my hometown. And, I was always a little envious of Pan American World Airways, because they were the class act. They were the flagship carrier for the United States. They flew nothing but international flights to exotic places like Paris, Tahiti, you name it. Well, I had a synchronicity. I went to a party and I met the founder of Pan American's son. Now, my name is Tripp, and I grew up in Westport, Massachusetts. There's a lot of Tripps there. They came over, many, many years ago in the 1600s and just seemed to settle there. Well, this Charlie Tripp was the son of the founder of Pan American World Airways. Juan Tripp was the founder. Now, they put an E on the end, T-R-I-P-P-E. And I used to say to passengers, no, I'm not Juan Tripp's daughter. If I was, why would I be working for this airline? Because they were always asking me in the 60s if I was, because I wore my name on my wings. And I meet Charlie Tripp, T-R-I-P-P-E. He's living in my high school boyfriend's house in Westport. He sailed into Westport. It's a beautiful little town right on the water. It's on the ocean. It's a beautiful river that comes in. And he fell in love with it. And he bought my high school boyfriend's house, a place that I used to hang out all the time when I was a teenager. And, think about flying away, I guess, or what am I going to do with my life? And here he ended up the son of the founder of Pan American, living in that house. I shake his hand and he said, I was a scheduler with Pan American. Well, rather than feeling like, oh, gee, weren't you lucky that you were his son? First of all, the airline had gone bankrupt, unfortunately. And he was kind of commiserating about that. Plus, he was a scheduler. I got to travel the world. And, after Pan Am went bankrupt, we bought their Pacific routes. So I flew all over the world. I flew Asia, I flew Europe, I flew South America, Central America, Canada. I flew everywhere. And I had a blast. But I highly recommend travel because it really does open your mind to other cultures and the fact that we're not the biggest, only thing there is on the planet. There are a lot of other people and cultures out there, and we're all interconnected. When you go metaphysical, you begin to understand that we are one big family. And that's exciting to learn because it gets rid of, any kind of prejudice or judgment or, all those negative things, competition that people like to plug into that keep you tied down into the 3D world. What you want to do is work on yourself in these times because we are now living in the higher realm of consciousness, whether we know it or not. It's shifted already, and we have the ability to tap into our higher self and get direction, get guidance, heal ourselves, and manifest. And that's what we're going to talk about for these 8 weeks, because it's really exciting when you learn that you're in the driver's seat. And that was my biggest shock when I first learned about creative visualization and how all you have to do is believe that you want something and stop wanting it, but believe that you have it and it will manifest. Now, of course, as we get older, sometimes we get blocks because we become more fearful. When you're young, I would love to get these books in the schools. Both of them should be reading for young people because I am hearing more and more. I hear messages from people that the younger generation is depressed, many of them, because they feel like it's a hopeless situation for them. They've been told that the planet isn't going to last with global warming. Well, who knows? We've had other periods of time where, up here in the Northeast where I live, I'm in the Massachusetts, Rhode Island area. We had an ice age at one point. Everything was covered with ice. And that's why we have a lot of granite and those types of rocks. There was a time when there was a lot of big animals and big people on the planet. And I think it was a very much more tropical atmosphere. So it's always changing. But to make yourself crazy over it is kind of pointless, because if you can't control it, all you can do is control yourself. That's what my teaching is all about. You are the center of your universe. And I'm not saying that to make you selfish, because if you have to work on your character, if you're not working on yourself to make yourself a better person, what you give is what you get. What you give is what you get. It's all about your frequency. If you want more energy, you have to let go of the things that are holding you back. And you do that by doing this inner work. And it's a process. It's a big process. And life's lessons will show up as you move along. If you're listening to your inner guidance, your higher self will guide you to the lessons that you need in order to function in this three-dimensional world in a productive way. Because the more you're working on yourself and creating a win-win situation, and if you've found your purpose, you all came here for a purpose. And if you know what your purpose is, or you get little glimmers of it, your purpose changes throughout your life. But if you get some sort of indication that that's your passion, that's what you love, that's probably your purpose. And if you can share it with the world somehow, some way, that's a very good thing, because people that are other-centered live a much more harmonious life. than those who are self-centered. Self-centered people can tend to be not people, and they can end up being lonely and don't know what to do with themselves. But if you're other-centered and you like people and you like the idea of sharing what you know, what your talent is maybe, or what your passion is with other like-minded people, or even anybody that comes along, that's what I do on my YouTube channel, you'll have a good time. I guarantee it. I mean, it was like being a crew member. If I just decided to enjoy the people, whoever they were on board the airplane, without judging them or wanting them to act a certain way, I would have a much better time if I just let it go. And, there's so many wonderful teachers out there that you can plug into. I've studied so many of them over the course of my life, because once I had that big aha moment with the UFOs, and then meeting the man who taught me creative visualization in 1967, as soon as I started flying, that was it for me. I started studying metaphysics, and I've never stopped. And the things I have discovered are life altering. I'll tell you another quick story. I was doing yoga in my New York apartment back in probably 1968. I moved to New York from Chicago. That was what I wrote on my card that I wanted to manifest: a transfer to New York, because I didn't like windy Chicago. I wanted to transfer to New York and move to a beautiful apartment. I wrote it down on my card. I visualized it and felt like it was happening every night. Pretty soon, I talked my roommate Candy into transferring to New York, and we put our transfers in, and they went through right away. And we waltzed into a building and rented an apartment. And it was beautiful. They even furnished it for us. Everything worked out so harmoniously. It really got my attention. I said to myself, this is like finding the genie in the bottle. It is amazing. So anyway, I got into yoga. I discovered that I loved yoga when I first started flying, and I'd gone to some yoga classes. So I was doing yoga in my studio, my apartment by myself. And I went into the death pose. I was relaxing. And all of a sudden, I had this download of what felt like a past life, where I was a man in a hot, steamy little room, and my whole body was burned. I was waiting for a doctor to come in and save me. And I felt like I'd been a pilot in an airplane that was flying cargo to Europe. This was the impression I got. Royal Air Force, living in England, flying to Europe during World War II. Bingo, I get shot down. I'm all damaged. I need help. I'm relying on a doctor helping me, and it doesn't work. I pass on. I leave. I made up my mind in this life to figure out spiritual healing. So what do? I set myself up with a condition when I'm in my mid-20s. These are how we get these lessons, I'm convinced. And the condition was early cancer. Doctor tells me, by this time I'm living out in California, in Marin County. And the doctor tells me, you have early cancer of the cervix. We need to do a hysterectomy next week. I'm in my mid-20s. So I said, well, what if I don't do that? He said, oh, you'll be dead by the time you're 40. Well, I had met a man who had had a brain tumor, and through prayer, it went away. And he'd just gotten back from sailing around the Caribbean as a charter boat captain with his family. He was happy, looking healthy. So I thought about him, and I said, if it worked for him, why can't it work for me? So I went to a Christian Science practitioner. One session, I'm sitting in her office. Now, she reflected this unconditional, non-judgmental love. And I was ready. I was ready to be healed. I was up against the wall. I wasn't going to have surgery, and I didn't want to die when I was 40. So that is the dark night of the soul. When you are in the dark night of the soul, you have nowhere to go but through the tunnel, through the darkness, and out to the other side. Or maybe you can do yourself in. I don't know. But a lot of people are going through a dark night of the soul right now. So I'm sharing this story. Well, with her unconditional love vibration, as soon as she said to me, but dear, don't you know, you are the perfect child of God. and perfect health is your birthright. Wow. It was like my energy just went through the roof. I opened up to my higher self, that level of consciousness we call the Christ, where there are no problems. It's a frequency, but it's very loving. And I felt so good. And I didn't even care if I had a physical problem. I was so fascinated and so freed from the darkness, the heaviness, the depression. I mean, I was depressed when I was really freaking out at the thought of what that doctor had told me. And it was all gone. It was all gone. I just walked out of there a different person. But I'm going to tell you something that's very interesting. You know, we emerge gently from matter to spirit because honestly, for 3 days, I was walking around in an altered state of consciousness, meaning I wasn't really in the 3D world anymore. I was living in it. I was walking around in it. I was talking to people, but there was something about it that was very, very, very difficult because the humans that I was connecting with just seemed very mechanical, and it was upsetting to observe. So after 3 days of this, I kind of slowly went back to my old self, but not completely. I was more awake than I'd ever been. I seemed to be very intuitive, psychic. You know, I was free of the fear of my death and the fear of the disease. It was gone. I was healed. I was completely healed. 1 year later, I went and had an examination. There was nothing wrong with me. Nothing. So you can have healings, spontaneous healings. We have that ability, but you have to have an open mind. Now, I attribute seeing those 3 UFOs to having a very open mind, because once you see something like that, you can say to yourself, you know what? Anything's possible, anything. And so I was receptive to the idea that, of course, you know, if other people have been healed spontaneously, why not? It's absolutely, definitely possible. And I've been healed of many things spontaneously since then, which I'll go into maybe at another time. But I want to talk about manifesting once again. You know, if you get this book, I don't know if you've gotten it already, the pink book, The Secrets of Manifesting, a Practical Guide. It takes you through step by step how you can manifest exactly what you desire. Now, there are some tricks to it. You have to have, number one, a burning desire. If it's wishy-washy, chances are you won't manifest it. But if you really, really have a burning desire for something, I had a burning desire to move to New York when I tried it the first time. And many times after that, I had a burning desire to move, you know, I needed a place to live, or, you know, you can even use it when you go shopping. If you have a burning desire that you really need a certain item, it will show up. I hear stories all the time of people that just put the intention out there and then it shows up. That's the key to it, though. You have to put your intention and focus on what it is that you really desire. And if it's something that's going to benefit not just you, but other people too, it gives it more power. That's why it's a good thing to do these masterminds, because when 2 or more people come together that are like-minded and they help each other with manifesting and focusing on positive things, they get results, which is wonderful. And that's what we need to do in this time of the Great Awakening, because a lot of times people are telling me they don't have the same community connections that they did, you know, before, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago now, that things started going downhill with the pandemic and all these things that we've had to deal with. So, you know, things are moving very quickly now. We're in the time of transition. Things are shifting. And we need support. We need to support each other in these times because it can be very confusing and very difficult to maneuver. But I have proven over and over and over again that you don't have to worry. You can get rid of anxiety. You can sleep like a baby through the night by letting go of all your fears, by trusting that there is a God and that God, who is good, can oppose anything that comes along that's negative. Being a crew member, I had to prove that quite a few times. You'd be in a dicey situation, things happen in aviation, but if you stay centered and at peace with yourself and focus on the outcomes that you want when you're traveling, that works. Things go very harmoniously. You can do it when you're driving around in your car, when you're shopping, when you're going to work with your colleagues and your people that you work with. You don't have to have negative experiences. It's all up to you. You're in the driver's seat. You are a co-creator. And when you learn to go within, be an observer, and not let your emotions run you ragged and run amok, when you do that, when you're always reacting to everything around you because you have no control of the way you react, that's not a good thing. The first person I started studying when I got really interested in metaphysics, and I read as much as I could about him and books that were written about him, was George Gurdjieff, who was a mystic, and he called it the work. And he really taught me how to watch my thought, because there's the swing of the pendulum. That means you're high when things are going well on the outside, and you're miserable when they're going badly on the outside. Well, if you turn on the news and you watch all the bad news, and you're the kind of person that reacts to everything, it's going to make you feel miserable. But there is a way to stay centered. You become an observer. One of the things he taught was spend 3 days not engaging in any negative conversations. Don't change your routine, but just refuse to engage in a negative conversation. I was working on the airplane and I found myself walking away from conversations in the galley or in the cabin. I would just walk away because all of a sudden I'd realize, oh, this is negative. I don't want to react to it. And it allowed me to observe the way our brains work, because we have these neurons in our brains that automatically default to the programming. And if you want to change your outer world, you have to change your inner world. It's not the other way around. Everybody thinks if I buy the big house or I get the fancy car, it's going to change my outer. I'll be happy, happy, happy. Happiness is an inside job. It's not out there. It doesn't matter what you have out there. If you're miserable inside, it's not going to change. You have to do the inner work. Now, for me, it was a combination of understanding how the mind works and spirituality. Spirituality is very key to getting yourself centered, because you have to work on yourself. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to, be an idiot, doing stupid things and not have a moral compass, but I'll just take what I want. No, it doesn't work that way. There is such a thing as payback. And I've seen that happen over and over again to people. They think they've done some great thing by maybe ripping off a business partner or a spouse, but then it doesn't work out so well for them because your subconscious mind knows everything. And if you really did something that you innately know was not cool, it'll come back to haunt you. It really will. I've seen that happen. So it's good to work on yourself as far as developing more of a spiritual self. Your higher self is really a very loving, eternal soul that has always been. It was never born. It will never die. You're using your body to function in this three-dimensional world. And you can just enjoy your life once you find the key, the secret. That's why I call my books The Secrets of Manifesting. the secrets of manifesting a practical guide, because it's kept from the public. It's not mainstream. You're not going to turn on the TV and see programs about it. Now, when I first had my big aha moments, spontaneous healings, manifesting, I just couldn't believe it wasn't mainstream. And for years, I've questioned why aren't they teaching this in the schools? Why aren't more people being exposed to the idea that you have to go within? There's no doubt about it. I mean, there are certain cultures that I know practice meditation more than the American culture. They even banned it in American schools. They call it mindfulness now, that you can, get a taste of in some of the schools. But they always said meditation was like a religion. Well, it's not really. It's using your mind to calm yourself down. And the kind of meditation I like is called active meditation. When I get myself into that alpha level of consciousness and I visualize an outcome that I want, I am able to manifest it much more easily because I've already rehearsed it. I've already practiced it. All the great athletes use creative visualization to become superstars. Anybody who's functioning at a high level is a good visualizer. That's how it works. So learning to use your mind in a special way is very, very important. Well, I'm going to wrap up this first Zoom call. And once again, this is the book that you can work with. People are getting tremendous results, learning how to organize their minds and their lives in an orderly way, and figuring out exactly what they want to manifest. You need to sit down with yourself and really say, if I could manifest one thing that would change everything, what would it be? A different job, a better relationship with your spouse. I've had people come to my seminars that have changed in every area of life, better relationships. All of a sudden they'd walk out of the seminar. One gal called me up. She said, "You're not going to believe this. I just got a phone call and somebody offered me my dream job." See, once you get yourself into that state, that frequency, that vibration where you are living in the thing you desire, in the frequency of it, it will naturally show up in your life. You become like a magnet. It magnetizes your thought. And there are people out there that will connect with you. We're going to go into all of this much more deeply in all of these sessions. And go to my website, RebeccaTripp.com. And if you want to connect with me, send me an email. And maybe there's something specifically that you'd like to work on. And we could do that in these sessions. So have a wonderful day. And thank you for showing up. Bye-bye.